He's and we don't do delegates, but you are here for informational purposes. So we do have quorum.
We're going to ask the audience to not speak over our council members. We have a delegate here for Sheriff Johnson, and we will introduce him momentarily. Allow me to handle the process and run the meeting. As part of our first, great, we have a quorum, and now we'll move on to the first agenda item. As part of the first order of business, we'll need to vote to approve the minutes from our last meeting, which was held on January 17th, 2025. I trust that council members received the minutes and had the opportunity to review the minutes. Are there any questions or amendments to the minutes? Okay, if there are no corrections to the minutes, I'll entertain a motion to approve the minutes as presented.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Thank you. We have a motion from Councilmember Hendricks. Do we have a second?
Second.
And a second from Councilmember Falenko. Cassie, please call roll for votes.
Adria Berry.
Aye.
David Gerken. Katie Nail. Okay, and Randy and Taras have approved.
The motion passes. Thank you, Cassie. All right, minutes are approved. So then we're going to move to the next agenda item, which is our introduction of new council members. So we have a couple of new council members, and you will notice we still have one opening. We're awaiting the final council member appointment from the Speaker of the House. This member will fill the position in statute of a citizen from a county with a population under 25,000 persons. So we will keep you updated once we learn more. Once we hear from the elected officials on who they're naming to the council, we put it on our website immediately. Let me start with actually David Gerken. So David Gerken, you are an appointee of Governor Stitt. If you wouldn't mind telling us a little bit about yourself and introducing yourself, thank you. No, thank you. Thank you. And then we have Taras Falenko, who is an appointee of the Senate Pro Tem Lonnie Paxton. So Taras, if you'll let us know a little bit about yourself and introduce yourself. Oh, I'm so sorry. Would you mind pushing the button so that people online can hear? Thank you.
It's my first time doing this. Name's Ukrainian. Everybody always asks that, so I just get that out of the way. Don't care if you mess it up. So as long as I know you're talking to me, we run a full service operation, packaging. Farm processing and dispensary in the Tulsa area.
All right, thank you, Taras. I'm saying it correctly, though, right? Will you correct me if I'm saying it incorrectly?
You said it correct.
Okay, thank you. And then Sheriff Tommy Johnson III is another Senate Pro Tem Paxton appointee. The appointment came pretty late in the week, so he sent a delegate. Major Sean Shelby is here for informational purposes. Thank you for being here, Major Shelby. I won't put you on the spot, but thank you for being here. All right, so we do need to address having a council co-chair. This is a formality. If you would like to discuss that now, we can. I also feel I should mention that the council has the option to table this agenda item until we have the full council in attendance, but I will pause and leave that up to you all for decision if you want to name a co-chair now or wait until we have a full council.
Madam Chairman, I move we table that till next meeting.
Okay, thank you for that. We can definitely table that, and I'll entertain, well, that sounded like an official motion, correct? Okay, so is there a second?
A second.
Thank you. We do have a second. Cassie, will you call roll for the votes? Sorry.
You're good. Adria Berry, yes. Okay, to table a co-chair.
Yes.
Katie Nail. Taras Falenko.
Here?
You're voting to table the
Table,
decision
yes.
for a
I second.
co-chair.
Thank you.
Table.
Okay, so that was a motion to table the discussion about council co-chair. We will table that until the next meeting and bring it back then. So there should be a full council and time for discussion before the council amongst all of you about who wants to be co-chair. Okay, so we're going to move into some OMMA updates, and then we'll move into some conversation from council members and any questions that council members have. I have an update on the new licensing and inspection software build out. As you guys know, I've mentioned it a few times in public speaking situations, but we entered the RFP process with OMMA in January of 2023. It took 2 years, and in January 2025, we were presented with two options, and we chose an option, and we've been building the system with them since then. The system will be done within this calendar year. It will hold all inspection and licensing information in one place. It will have a lot more streamlined processes than what we have in our current licensing software, and we are working really hard on it, actually on a daily basis right now, to build this out. So I wanted to just let you all know that's happening behind the scenes. Our vendor it's a Salesforce platform, which is a very well-known platform, and it's something that's easy to build and change whenever laws change. So right now we're in a system that is really so customized that it's difficult to make the changes when laws change. The Salesforce platform will allow us to make those changes easily. So I wanted to just give an update and see if council members have any questions, comments, advice, or anything like that about the software. I don't think so. Okay. Thank you. We will move on to an update that I think most people are probably waiting for, the legislative update. We are going to hear from Ashley Krall, our Director of Government Affairs, for a discussion on the active bills from the 2025 legislative session. And she has a PowerPoint to share to go through what all is out there right now. After she presents this, we'd like to hear from council members on any thoughts that you have, questions, or comments about anything going on at the legislature right now. Ashley, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Director. I'm Ashley Krall, Director of Government Affairs for the Oklahoma Medical Marijuana Authority, and we're just going to quickly go through this PowerPoint and, like Director Berry said, discuss from there. So this graphic might be familiar from the last meeting, but it is essentially the steps that a bill requires in order to become law. Essentially, the bill is introduced, it is then heard in its originating committee and on the floor, and then goes to the opposite chamber and is heard on that committee and floor. If it's passed identically by both the House and the Senate, it can then go to the governor for his consideration. So right now, that's a brief overview, but if you have any questions on that process, we have resources on our website. OMMA's role in the legislative process. So as you know, OMMA is a state agency that's tasked with the licensing and regulation of the medical marijuana industry. We don't advocate for or against any proposed legislation. We're not a trade association, interest group, lobbyist organization, anything like that. The legislature passes, and then the governor signs bills. OMMA then writes administrative rules to promulgate the requirements laid out in those bills. There's some helpful websites where you can access committee hearings, floor votes, all of the bills in their entirety during the session, okhouse.gov and oksenate.gov. As a reminder, OMMA does keep a list of bills that we are tracking on our website. That's at omma.ok.gov/legislation. And that's a good way to see bills at a glance. And there's hyperlinks to the official language of the bills. So that's your best friend this time of year. Here are some of the deadlines. We put them in an infographic form so you can see some of the big deadlines ahead. These are also available on our website. But right now, we are, the next deadline ahead of us is Thursday, April 24th, the opposite committee deadline. So House bills have already been heard in House committees and on the House floor, and they have switched to go over to the Senate. The same has happened with Senate bills. They were heard in Senate committees and on the Senate floor and are now eligible for consideration in House committees. Following that, if passed, they will be heard on the opposite floor and then potentially go to the governor for his signature. Thank you. So these are the bills that are currently still alive. House Bill 1163 by Representative Gann clarifies that possession of 1.5 ounces of flour by persons who can state a medical condition during a traffic stop changes that to a misdemeanor offense. House Bill 2118 by Representative Kennedy amends multiple sections of law about the military department and includes some language about ingesting any substances or products derived from marijuana, hemp, THC. Both of these are assigned to Senate committees, and you can find more details on the websites. House Bill 2807 by Representative Marney clarifies warehouse locations to temporarily store medical marijuana, provided all that storage is documented, tracked, and traceable, and amends specific background check requirements and excludes beverages from prepackaging requirements. House Bill 2837 by Representative Ty Burns requires that employees of a medical marijuana business complete an annual educational training course provided by or approved by the authority, and then requires that proof of training be provided as part of the employee credential application. House Bill 2897 by Representative Townley requires dispensaries to display signage near the cash register and in 2 other places regarding warnings about ingesting THC products while pregnant. Senate Bill 39 by Senator Daniels prohibits the carry and use of firearms while under the influence of medical marijuana and adjusts the provisions related to the Self-Defense Act to allow persons legally licensed to use medical marijuana to qualify for a handgun license. Senate Bill 518 by Senator Alvord adds additional required warning details to medical marijuana and requires notice about unlawful driving while under the influence. Senate Bill 522 by Senator Coleman directs the OMMA Executive Advisory Council to organize a task force on purchase and possession limits for medical marijuana patients and to provide recommendations and submit a report. Senate Bill 634 by Senator Paxton expands the membership of the Impaired Driving Prevention Advisory Committee to include a couple of other agency heads. Senate Bill 640 by Senator Paxton increases the distance between medical marijuana dispensaries and schools or places of worship from 1,000 feet to 3,000 feet. Senate Bill 697 by Senator Coleman allows for commercial transporters to use warehouse locations to temporarily store products, provided all that temporary storage is documented, tracked, and traceable. Senate Bill 774 by Senator Coleman replaces the 24-character identifier with a 12-character identifier and a scannable barcode. Senate Bill 786 by Senator Weaver prohibits secondhand medical marijuana smoke while operating a motor vehicle and prohibits an open container that contains medical marijuana. Senate Bill 1039 by Senator Alvord directs the authority to deny any application that has been resubmitted more than once for a material deficiency or recurring clerical error that has not been cured on consecutive submissions. And Senate Bill 1066 by Senator Grellner requires physician education for physicians that recommend medical marijuana and allows the State Board of Medical Licensure and Supervision, State Board of Osteopathic Examiners, and the Board of Podiatric Medical Examiners to consult with the OMMA Executive Director about a list of approved medical education courses for recommending physicians. So that was kind of a quick overview of the pending legislation, but we also wanted to provide an update on proposed permanent rules. So as you know, the public comment period for our permanent rules ran from November 15th to December 17th, 2024. We held a public comment hearing here at the Capitol on December 17th that was live streamed, and it's also recorded on our website. We received 283 comments on the proposed rule changes. About 70% of those were about pre-packaging requirements, and about 16% addressed the updated testing requirements. So OMMA responded individually to all of those comments received in our agency rule report and submitted the proposed permanent rules to the legislature in January. You can find a copy of that full agency rule report and all of OMMA's comments on our website at omma.ok.gov/comment. That's also a place where you can see a summary of all of those changes.
I'm going to really quickly just let you guys know this whole presentation on legislation is not a normal thing that state agencies do. It's something we do to be a helpful resource to you all, especially with the kind of gap in having a trade association present. We're giving you this information. It's truly just informational, no opinions from us. We would like to hear if there are opinions from the council. Same on commenting and answering every single rule comment. That is not an ordinary practice, and I don't know of any other agency that does that. We do that in an attempt to build that rapport with people who make those comments, to let them know we're reading every single one. We are taking all of it under advisement and doing what we can under the law as far as changing some of the rules based on the comments that we receive. So Ashley and her team go above and beyond, and I wanted to make sure to point that out.
Thank you. I appreciate that. We also wanted to provide an update about upcoming emergency rules. New emergency rules will be needed to implement pre-packaging requirements pursuant to House Bill 3361. OMMA will promulgate and publish details about these rules ahead of the bill's effective date of June 1, 2025. If there are no changes to the pre-packaging statute during this legislative session, those emergency rules will be largely identical to the proposed permanent rules that we submitted to the legislature and governor. If you want some more information or to see some frequently asked questions about pre-packaging, visit omma.ok.gov/prepack. And then you can find current OMMA rules at any time at omma.ok.gov/rules.
Okay, so now, council members, do you have any questions, comments, anything about the legislation that's pending? Taras.
Thank you. Senate Bill 1039, the deny an application that's been resubmitted more than once for a material deficiency. How do you guys, like, in your opinion, like, how would that work? Because right now, like, we're faced with a situation where, you know, my farm, we're waiting 14 months for our renewal already. It's been rejected 4 times, and it's just inconsistent, you know, on the rejections. So because we submit the same thing for all of our licenses, and it's a different thing every time. So I'm just concerned that, you know, if that process isn't lined out, this could be problematic for most of us. And, you know, and just a perfect example of something that didn't make sense to us is, you know, our surety bond on the farm expired from our last application, and we'd renewed it, but the surety bond that was submitted as part of the original application was fine for the period of time that we were renewing. So, you know, and that was the latest rejection. So then we submitted our updated new surety bond. So, you know, it's just things like that. There's some little nuances where there's inconsistencies in the approval process and in the timeliness. So this could be a problem for us as a community.
Thank you for your comment, and it's well received, and I do understand where you're coming from. On Senate Bill 1039, a little bit of background. Senator Alvord called us with a constituent issue, and there was a kind of a squatter on one of his constituents' land that they'd been rejected by OMMA like, I don't know, 5 or 6 times and still had a license, and there was some legal things going on. He wanted to get to a place where if someone is rejected for the same thing over and over, or large deficiencies, that they would be denied. So we have had conversations with him about how much nuance there is and how we need it to be incredibly clear in statute what they mean by the words material deficiencies and things like that, because otherwise it's open for interpretation. So that's about 1039. I will say it's in the House right now, and Representative Marty has called us with his own concerns, and I believe he amended the language maybe in his committee.
It will be amended in the next committee. Yes, there was an amendment in his committee and discussions about amending it again before it gets out of the next committee.
So there are conversations happening at the legislature about this, so this is timely. On the other side of it, just as far as a commercial licensee telling me that as the executive director, I want to let you know that a lot of these things are coming to my attention as far as inconsistencies in the way that we have processed some of our applications, inconsistencies and rejections. We are taking action in the form of several things. We've made some major staffing changes, some leadership changes, and we're making some internal procedure and policy changes because there have been things that have been brought to my attention recently that let me know we need to fix some things internally to make sure this isn't happening any further. I believe that the industry will start seeing some positive changes very soon because of some of the changes we've made internally. Anything else on legislation or rules that you'd like to know about?
Yeah, I wanted to talk about pre-pack. This is just, it's going to be a nightmare for everybody. I really don't know why they did it to begin with, but it is what it is. So my question is, so you have a product that goes through testing and it meets or is less than the 10,000 parts per million threshold, goes into a pack, and then we get secret shopped. And because you got some, let's just use mold as an example. Say it hits at 9,000, passes the test, goes in a pre-pack. It's probably going to grow inside of that pre-pack. So then you come in and secret shop, take some of those packs, and then it's going to hit higher than 10,000. So my question is, why would they not just go off the original testing when they come in and secret shop to see if that product doesn't meet that threshold anymore?
Well, the purpose of the secret shopper legislation, that as far as we know from the legislature, what they've told us, is for us to double check that original testing was correct. So that was before pre-pack was considered. So I do understand what you're saying. I want to look at our science team and see if they have a response to this, or if you'd rather formulate a response and we can get back to Councilmember Hendricks.
I would appreciate a little bit of time to put something coherent together to bring back to the advisory council.
So on pre-pack being, basically your premise is that the mold will continue, if there is a little bit of mold, it will continue to grow once it's pre-packed. So then if we come in and secret shop and pull that off the shelf, it's going to test hot for mold, and that will indicate to us that the testing, the previous testing wasn't proper.
Yeah, and then, I mean, you look at it now. That whole batch. I don't know how you search it out and find it all out there. That came out of that. I mean, I don't know how deep that they would go with it to call that batch bad, because we're going to pre-pack in eighths. I mean, that's a tremendous amount for a 15-pound batch that tested properly in the beginning. Where does it all go? Because we sell to 200 dispensaries across the state of Oklahoma, and it could come out of that same batch out there. And then now our name is smeared all over the news for for bad weed. You know what I'm saying? That happened on that. So it's just I just don't know how that's going to be handled, and I'd appreciate some clarification on that.
Okay, and I appreciate you bringing that to us. I think the concerns right now on the other side are that some of the original testing isn't done up to standards, and so that's what we're really trying to get to. So we've got to balance knowing that with knowing what you're saying and figure out where that balance is. So I appreciate the comment so that we can look into this, and we will communicate back with the full council soon.
Is there any chance that this pre-pack might get pushed back a little bit? Or is that June 1st going to be pretty much a hard, it's done?
The legislation as of right now would go into effect June 1st. Now, there is still time for the legislature to push that back if that's what they choose to do. I think there have been conversations, but that is outside of our control. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, as of right this minute, the bill still says June 1st, correct, Ashley? Yes. Yeah, it still does.
It's going to be a challenge for everybody.
It's going to be very cumbersome on especially large growers like us and Ross, and it's going to be tough. But we'll do it. We do what we got to do, whatever it is there. But that there's multiple questions that we'll start feeding you guys and try to get some clarification on some of this stuff, because it's just going to be different.
Yes.
And the
our communications team, Portia Riley, down there, and her team has a FAQ document on the website that we keep updated consistently when we get questions from the industry.
And Oklahoma is very restrictive on their numbers anyway. I mean, 10,000 is a small threshold. You got states out there at 100,000, 10 times. So I've never seen anything proven that if it hurts you below 100,000. So for 10,000, it could grow pretty quickly inside a pre-pack, I think. That's just, I have no idea because we've never done it before, but we'll find out, I guess. So.
Okay, thank you for all of that. That's very helpful. Are there any other questions or comments about the legislation that's pending or rules that are pending?
I just want to add to the prepackaging. My concern is, I mean, it goes along with it growing in there. When you put that plant in something in a prepackage and it's in the dark, like the things that will grow, to me, it's a safety hazard. So maybe they can do some research prior to do some research and then go back to prepackaging. I really don't think it's at a patient safety side. It's going to be a problem.
Thank you for your comments. I hope that that everyone who has opinions has also spoken with your legislators and the legislators that authored the bill. Thank you for that, though. Is there any other comment or question about legislation, rules?
One other thing is I don't understand the 1,000 to 3,000 foot. Why would we expand that? 1,000's pretty prohibitive out there already. I mean, 3,000 feet, you're almost going to 3/4 of a mile. You know, you get inside a city like we're in Tulsa, you start drawing that big a radius of a circle. That's huge. I don't know if he's doing it because he wants to be prohibitive on the cannabis industry. I don't see how you're protecting anything from. You're not going to have a kid come out of school and go 3/4 of a mile or even 1,000 feet. You know, in Tulsa, we had to actually fight 2 different times in court and spend a lot of money on new licenses trying to come in 1,000 feet. It's a pretty good ways. I mean, it's a distance. So I really don't see why we're doing that, but it's my opinion.
Okay, well, that's what we're here for. We can share that our council member has that opinion on the legislation.
I mean, some of these small towns, they're not even that big. You wouldn't be able to have a dispensary anywhere inside some of those small towns out there.
We can share that with the Senate Pro Tem Lonnie Paxton, who is authoring the bill. Let him know that that is your concern. That's what we need to know. All right, is there any other comment or question from council members on legislation or rulemaking before we move on to the next agenda item?
I'll just make a comment that we don't have those kinds of issues with PM, so everybody needs to buy our product and stay away from Randy's. So, kidding. It's a joke.
Boy, here we go. Okay, so we are going to move into a science department update. You'll see over here on my left, we have a few members of our team that are in our science department. Lee Rhodes is our chief science officer. He has a couple of his team members who he's going to introduce. He's going to give us an update on the OMMA QA lab and the new patient services department. And then we will take questions and comments from the council on Lee's presentation. So I'm going to turn it over to you now, Lee.
Thank you. I'm glad for the opportunity to give you all some information on things going on in the science department. First, as Director Berry said, I would like to introduce 2 of the senior members of our team, Bobby Gramling, Deputy Chief Science Officer, and Courtney Knosson, who is our laboratory director. And I'm going to ask each of them just to give you a very brief introduction and their background.
Good morning. Like Lee mentioned, my name is Bobby Gramling. I have a master's in biochemistry and molecular biology. I have over 20 plus years in the laboratory industry.
Good morning. My name is Courtney Knosson. I have a master's degree in forensic science, specifically forensic chemistry and forensic biology. And I have experience in all of the instrumentation or an understanding of all the instrumentation that we'll be using in the QA laboratory.
Thank you. First, a quick update on the QA lab. I know that's a subject that's on top of mind for quite a few folks. Construction is complete and instrument delivery has begun. We have on site right now the HPLC which is the instrument that we will be measuring cannabinoid concentration with. In the coming days, the rest of the instrumentation will be delivered, first will be our LC tandem mass spec, which we will be using for pesticides and mycotoxins, followed by GC, a couple of different GCs, one of which is just a mass spec, and then one is a tandem mass spec that we'll be testing additional pesticides with. And then the ICP-MS, which will be testing heavy metals. And lastly, the qPCR, which we'll be using for microbiology analysis. All of the peripheral equipment is essentially on hand. So we're ready to hit the ground running as soon as we get these into the laboratory. And as I said, the HPLC is there now. Regarding our staffing, Courtney is our laboratory director you just met. We have 4 analysts on staff now with many years of experience in these techniques, including cannabis testing. And then we have a quality assurance manager with many years, in fact, decades of experience in quality management and compliance in laboratory settings. She's a great asset to us, particularly for preparing us for accreditation. We've already begun that process. We will be obtaining ISO 17025, just as the commercial laboratories are required to have. We've begun that process, and we've been in frequent contact with the company that we've chosen to provide that for us to expedite our accreditation so that it's not an extended time before we're actually generating results that we can take action on. That process is underway. Just to fill you all in on what the objectives are for this quality assurance lab, in essence, it's to provide another line of defense for the state of Oklahoma in helping to ensure public safety. It's not intended to be the cop lab. We really are focusing on what is in the best interest and maximize the safety of the state of Oklahoma, particularly the patients that are consuming medical marijuana. But more specifically, will help us to identify product recalls, survey medical marijuana products for other potentially harmful things, to reduce interlab variability. That is not only in Oklahoma, but an issue across the United States. And this laboratory is going to help us address that issue. And establish and promote best practices throughout the testing process. And then lastly, assist the state and law enforcement in filling the gap that exists on testing the hemp-derived cannabinoids that are out there in the marketplace right now. Our approach to all of this is twofold. We're going to do what I've called parallel testing. Every grower and processor, and in some cases dispensaries, when they create a product, have to send it for testing. They have to send 2 samples, a primary sample and a reserve sample. In theory, those are both the same thing. We will be going out and collecting reserve samples from the laboratory when it's come to the time that they need to retain those on site for any work that they need to do. And we will be running the exact same tests and then comparing our results to what the laboratory got. The other process is that we will create what's called a round robin sample. We will be able to obtain real world products so that we can create a in-matrix sample that's more accurate than sometimes what the labs have available to them to do this kind of testing. We'll create a master sample, send that out, have the labs test those, and then send us the results back, and we will evaluate the variability between each of the labs. And if somebody's an outlier, then we will look into why that might be. That's pretty much the overview I wanted to give you all. Any questions? Anything I can help you all with? Yes, sir.
So if the reserve sample doesn't match the primary sample that the lab we used, what is the outcome of that? What happens at that point? How do you see that working?
Thank you. All we'll know at that point is that we have a discrepancy. We will start investigating why that may be. We will look at what the laboratory did. We'll certainly will review our own processes to see if we're the source of that discrepancy, and then continue with a root cause analysis until we actually come up with an answer. Does that answer your question?
Yes.
Yeah, that, as a business, and that's what we are, is a business here in Oklahoma, basically, we have to rely on the labs. I mean, we can't rely on anything else. So it kind of goes back to what we were talking about a while ago. When we get our test results, we're doing business reliant upon what those test results were. So, I don't know how you can, just like, you go out and say if we did pass and then something happens down the road, it doesn't. I mean, you go back and, all that money spent, all that product used, all that kind of stuff. I mean, I think I'm just saying we are extremely reliant on those lab test results. And because we don't know what you guys are going to come up with, you know what I'm saying, when at that point. So.
Yeah, and that's why the legislature wants us to have a quality assurance lab, so that we can ensure that the labs businesses are depending on are giving accurate results for businesses, but also for patients. Because at the end of the day, this is a consumable product that ends up in someone's hands and they're ingesting it, inhaling it. What we've seen across Oklahoma and across the United States is variability in lab tests. And so this is the way the legislature would like for us to help even that playing field.
I was just curious about the pesticides. What type of pesticides do you test for, and how specific do you get on those?
As for specificity, we currently have about a dozen specific pesticides that are required to be tested for. The plan is to expand that menu out, but we do look for specific pesticides. They tend to either be fungicides or insecticides that are in use right now.
Yeah, there's a full list in our rules that we can make sure to send you that exact link to. Thank you.
I have a question. Does this include testing of products sold outside of dispensaries?
We'll be doing various things, but yes, we look at it as an opportunity to do some of the testing on the hemp-derived products. The Attorney General's office has already contacted us about whether or not they could utilize our lab to test some of the products they're pulling from gas stations and vape shops.
On the QA lab, in reference to the labs that we use, is there a way to do maybe some kind of a accuracy rating and rank all the labs against each other based on samples that we send in, and say lab A is the most accurate versus lab Z that they're constantly off compared to everybody else? Because I feel like the testing has gotten a little bit more stabilized, but we're not completely there yet. And it would just make it a better decision-making process for us on the business side on which labs to use, so we can say, hey, these guys are more accurate, and we can rely on that data a little bit better.
We can look into how we would accomplish that with the data that we'll receive from the QA lab. I think that previously we haven't had data to be able to, as much data, but we'll look into how we could potentially achieve that. It makes sense. Lee, do you want to continue with your patient services update?
Yes, thank you. Recently, Director Berry tasked me with the setting up what we are calling the Patient Services Department, and that is basically just exactly what it sounds like, to focus our efforts in that department on things that touch directly on patients, starting from patient when they are going through the licensing process, evaluating, improving our customer service while we're carrying those functions out, and also to become an education information resource for patients to help them be more confident in their use of medical marijuana. That's one aspect of what we're going to do, but we're also going to take a population focus as well, a public health approach that, again, to become a resource specifically for the medical community with regard to education and information. We've gotten a lot of feedback that that would be beneficial to MDs, DOs, et cetera. And so there's a void there that we intend to step into and become that resource. And also just gather information to assess what the impacts, both potentially negative but also beneficial for the Oklahoma community at large and medical marijuana patients specifically. Now, that in a nutshell is and it's in its beginning stages now. I've hired a director. She starts on Monday. I specifically wanted to seek out someone who has a nursing degree, because in my background is in healthcare, and in my experience, there's nobody that advocates for a patient like a nurse. And this director, she has 20 years of direct patient care experience. She's also got a master's from the University of Maryland in medical marijuana therapeutics.
Thank you, Lee. Yes, we recruited this patient services director. She's moving to Oklahoma just for this role. She's highly qualified and is going to be an excellent addition to our team. She will be at a future council meeting, I'm sure, to introduce herself and tell you all exactly what she's working on in that department. But we are excited to get that up and running, the QA lab, the patient services unit, lots going on a day-to-day basis inside of OMMA. And as Lee was talking, as Ashley was talking, I wanted to make sure to point out that as the director of this agency, I'm really proud of the people we have. We've recruited some incredibly talented and smart people at OMMA, and that is to serve the people of Oklahoma that we are mandated to serve and that we are told by statute to serve. It's been my goal to get the highest quality people we can inside our agency to do excellent work. And so it's all coming together, and I hope that you guys are starting to see some of that coming together on your side of things. But I do believe and know that 2025 is the year that everyone's going to see the results of all of the hard work we've been putting in to get the staff in place and the training in place and the programs in place to serve the needs of Oklahomans. So with that, does the council have questions for Lee or his team on the QA lab or patient services unit? All right, we will move on to council member updates. We did ask for any agenda items ahead of time, but we'll have an opportunity for you to bring on ad hoc items if you have any. We did have a discussion topic added to the agenda by council member Katie Nail, and I want to turn it over to you if you would like to discuss your agenda item.
Yeah, and perfect because you guys are here, so maybe you can help answer. So this is a new term to me, but I guess there's something called lab shopping where things are submitted to different dispensaries. I get it. As a grower, I'd probably do the same thing. But from what I'm reading in here, there's nothing that says, okay, well, say you went to 4 labs. 3 failed, you have 1 that passed. Can they take that passing test and then go sell? And then, because I know that all the testing gets submitted to Metric, correct? So then someone goes and looks, oh, these 3 failed, this 1 passed, then you turn into the whole recall. So what are some steps, or maybe we should consider some steps to put into place to prevent that lab shopping for as far as patient safety goes?
Yeah, thank you for that. There are specific rules about it, and I'm going to lean on the science team to help answer this question.
Ms. Nail, with regard to the scenario you described where a licensee takes samples to 4 different labs and those labs test them, they fail at 3 but pass at 1, that really, if they're using Metric, that really shouldn't be happening. If they're entering their results, if the lab's entering the results into Metric, we do allow for retesting. But if you fail your initial test, you have to have that tested again. We allow a retest. If that retest confirms the initial failure result, then that package is done. If it failed for something that can be remediated, of course, then you can go through the remediation process. But if it didn't, then it needs to go to waste. But if the retest was different from the initial test, in other words, you got a pass on the retest, it has to be tested again. And if that retest is a failure, then that product has to go through the same process. If it passes, then what we've got is 2 out of 3 passes if we do allow those products to move forward into commerce. But that's the only scenario where something that fails initial testing can end up being transferred or sold to dispensaries if people are following what they're supposed to do in Metric. So hopefully I answered your question.
Yeah, it answers it, I guess. Then are there any consequences for, I'm not saying that everyone does this, I'm just saying for those that do. Are there any consequences when a situation like that happens to someone trying to get around pass and fail?
Yes, and we've had some of the embargo and recall events we've had recently have been because we've discovered that testing wasn't appropriately handled, should I say.
Yes, and the QA lab is going to help us identify a lot of that more, and we'll go exactly to the core, I think, of what you're asking. And lab shopping is absolutely a thing, not just here, across the U.S. We hear about it all the time. Taras?
Has that been tested, the Metric piece? So I actually hadn't thought of that concept. I mean, I've heard about the lab shopping, but batch A goes to lab 1. Sorry, guys. I didn't realize I was on. I'll turn that off. So batch A goes to lab 1. Let's say it fails for whatever it is. So then the producer goes to lab 2. Lab 2 passes. We'll just keep this simple. So now, in theory, you're saying it should be hung up and that first failure should go to waste. So has that been tested to see that batch actually went to waste or has been rejected, or is that a workaround that maybe we're not seeing from a compliance standpoint?
You're correct. That does take additional effort to make sure that a product that should have gone to waste, in fact, does. That is something that we try very hard to review on a regular basis, but it is, I'm not going to say it's not possible that something does go by. Thankfully, there's a number of safety advocates that are out there that sometimes help us with understanding things may not have been done the way they should have been. That is one thing that we are We're developing what we're calling a metric team that's their focus, information and metric, and are things being done the way they should be handled?
Okay. Well, I mean, I think, at least a proposal I'd say is if a batch fails and it doesn't have the ability to be remediated, I think the next step should be, did that actual batch, the 15 pounds or whatever that quantity was, that actually transferred to waste? I mean, that'd be a pretty easy, algorithm or something to search in the
Yes.
system.
We do have flags, so I think we're maybe saying a few different things. We have a separate system that flags things for us called NCS Analytics. It pulls all of our metric data and gives us the high level flags. And this is one of the things we look for. So we utilize the metric data daily, constantly, to find these flags. I think in the past it's been more work than just our people can do. That's why we had to have this separate system that comes on top, pulls that data, and flags us to things like this. We have several other flags that we utilize.
Sure. I just think this is a great thing to keep an eye on from a patient safety standpoint, because, while I think a lot of us try to do the right thing, there are the operators out there that they don't care. And with it being as tight as it is, then, when you're kind of backed into a corner, some of these folks are going to do whatever it takes to move the product. So, but I don't want to see bad product go out and somebody get sick or die from it, and because then that puts a problem for the rest of us in the industry. A huge spotlight on, create problems for us in the future with legislative action. So I'd like to see some enforcement, see if we can push that thing forward a little bit.
So we are not in charge of criminal enforcement, but we are in charge of the administrative enforcement. And you'll see that we have been historically. You'll see an uptick on that with the QA lab. Right now, we have to utilize 3 separate labs to do the testing. When we have the QA lab, it'll be our lab, and we'll be able to get it done faster than having to go to several different labs. So, I believe you'll start seeing an uptick in our enforcement authority soon. All right, any questions from council members or for Lee's team before we move on? Oh, wait, no, sorry. We're already past that. We were on council member updates. And so council member Nail had the question about lab shopping that turned into some conversation. And I want to see if any other council members have any ad hoc items that were not added to the agenda 24 hours prior. We can bring those up now.
I have one. Just for our information, I'm not a huge fan of metric. I think its functionalities are fine. I think we can utilize what it needs to be utilized, but the cost is very prohibitive to especially growers out there, and really any stage of it. I know at one time there was some rumblings about moving away from metric, or at least renegotiating the fees, because we have some of the highest fees in the country on metric. I know a lot of growers in other states don't pay near what we pay here in Oklahoma for tags and all that kind of stuff. Is there anything? I guess my first question would be: Is there any thoughts of moving away from metric to another system, or renegotiating with metric, and when is that possible, I guess?
Yes, so we have observed and have relationships with other state cannabis regulators, and are consistently asking questions about what else is out there. For us, it would require a reopening of the RFP, and we do have plans to do that. So we need to get through the build of this licensing and inspection software, and then the next step will be to reopen the RFP for metric. I want to be candid with you, though. In other states where they have done this, there's no other company that has come in and pushed metric out. It just hasn't happened yet. And we've been watching this to see, hopefully when we open the RFP, there is some competition. We know of BioTrack. We know of MJ Freeway. I'm sure they will bid as well. We're waiting. We're hoping there may be some other competition to come in and bid on the contract when we open the RFP.
So you feel like at that point that even if we retain metrics, fine. I mean, one. I don't know if one's any better than the other, because I don't know enough about the other ones to to make an opinion on that, but I know the pricing is high for what we do.
Okay, and so the question is, we open the RFP, if it does end up being metric, renegotiate so that there is less cost on the industry?
Yes.
Okay, noted, and thank you for that.
And one question, so if if pre-pack hits, like it's going to, do we have to have a metric tag on every single bag? Because if we package an eighths, every eighth going to have a metric tag on it?
No, it won't. And we have a metric bulletin coming very, very, very soon. I'm pushing to get this done. But can you give the broad, big picture overview of what that metric bulletin will say? Do you feel comfortable putting you on the spot?
Yes. Take, for example, eighths. You'll have your bulk flour, send that for testing. It's all clean, ready to go. What you will do is, because everything in metric is tracked in weight, even the things that are sold as eaches ultimately end up have a weight associated with them. So it'll still be weight-based. You'll just simply create a package from that bulk flour into however many eighths that you intend to transfer or sell to a dispensary under one tag. You create a package under one tag, and then you will, in metric, you'll just enter a note, 87 grams and whatever the math comes out, 20-something eighths. And then that's all you really have to do. It'll still be under one tag, only have one test for it.
Yep, and you'll just put in metric exactly how many we should see in that, associated with that tag, how many eighths we should see.
So if you split it up, say one dispensary buys this many eighths out of that same batch, right? And another one buys it. So from a grower standpoint, it's no different, right?
Yes, sir, that's correct.
Yeah, I'm glad you asked that and that we had the opportunity to discuss. I know this is a hot topic, and we are pushing to get that metric bulletin out to get that information in people's hands and update our FAQs with all that information as well. Are there any other items, Taras?
Yeah, I think you guys discussed this last session, the hemp-derived products, the THCA products. So, and I think you were kind of talking to that a little bit too about, patient safety. As I understand it, you guys don't feel like that's under your purview. And
it's not a feeling, it's a fact.
Well, okay, that's what I'm
okay.
It's a fact that it's not under your purview. I feel like it should be. But I'm concerned about that because there's no requirement for testing there. It's being sold into gas stations, and dispensaries are actually selling it on their shelves without requiring a license. So it's non-tested product. So you don't know what you're really buying, how clean or dirty it is. And I think that's problematic. And secondly, it just seems unclear to me too, and I'm hoping you can, I've asked this a couple times with guys in the group here, but it's confusing. So what is this? Is it legal here in the state or is it illegal? Because the way I read it, it's 87.7% of the value of the THCA, for the calculation. So that makes it THC. Most people, if they're growing flower in a farm and they're in a hemp-derived, they're under the agriculture department, they're not growing anything that actually meets the hemp definition. They're growing it that where it hits high in the THCA. So now that's hitting the stores or the streets, and it's unsafe. So is there, what is the status on that? Who's enforcing that side of the house? And how do we bring that in? I feel like that should fall underneath the purview of dispensaries to sell, so it's actually tested and safe for the community.
Yes, thank you. And this is an incredibly important topic, so we can discuss it at every meeting. But to answer your questions in order, one, it is illegal in Oklahoma. If you read the Controlled Dangerous Substances Act, these products are not legal. And we've had these conversations with legislators, with the AG's office, with OB&DD, and local law enforcement. There is a movement towards the law enforcement side tackling this. And that's, we're here to support them. Until the legislature intentionally opens up our authority to regulate these, our hands are tied. A few years ago, they went in and intentionally limited our jurisdiction to Delta 9 THC, very specifically. That's what statute reads. And so we saw this problem, though. We've seen it for years and have been out talking about it, talking to the legislature, offering to take regulatory authority over these products if that's what they would want. And so that's the extent to what we can do. We need assistance. If you guys want to see these products be regulated and tested by us, then that needs to be a legislative conversation. If you'd rather see them banned or illegal, that needs to be, the conversation with the legislature, with your local law enforcement, with whatever relationships you have. We've got to make sure we're all having these conversations. And I'll add one quick thing. I've even spoken to Congress about this issue, about the loophole in the Farm Bill, about how we could close that loophole. And there have been bills, there's been bill language at the federal level, and none of it has passed the finish line. So this is such a big issue across the U.S. that I agree that we have to figure out how to get this tackled.
Well, I mean,
in
it's
Oklahoma.
also causing, an unfair competitive advantage to some people because they're using that to offset. They don't have to file from a 280E standpoint. They don't have to report a lot of things. They don't have all the same costs that are incurred, and then they're using that as kind of it's like a shell game. So I think our leaders need to take some action on this and quickly, because it's a problem. And it's a problem for the business owners, and most importantly, it's a problem for the patient because they don't know what they're smoking. And I just don't want to see something happen to somebody and then now we start getting crushed by the legislators down the road. So.
And you don't have to name names. Why is there any pushback on this? Why won't they implement something to let y'all regulate it? I mean, why are they stonewalling on holding that up? I don't really understand the problem.
Isn't somebody doing a letter to get law enforcement on?
That is what we were in a meeting where that was said. Yes, we haven't seen the letter. But yeah, and then as far as just naming names, that's definitely not my role. But we, elected officials, there are 149 of them in the legislature. They all have their own constituents and they bring their own experiences to their roles. And so probably lots of different reasons. But we've seen California have an executive order. We've seen that bans them. We've seen other states like Maryland attempt to ban them, and then they immediately have an injunction put in place, and they're tied up in lawsuits. The hemp lobby in the D.C. is very strong. I will tell you guys that. It is very strong. It's interesting.
I have a question not related to this, unless anyone else has a comment on it. With the prepackaging, will the dispensary be allowed to, just to make sure I get my whole eighth, be able to weigh what's inside the package without the package?
Is that one of our FAQs? Like the dispensary can weigh it outside of the package? For the sample jars? What?
No, you can't open up the package. It's got to be tamper proof. So, but they can weigh the package, and you can make an estimate on, based on what you see on the package plus the bud in there. But I think as an operator, nobody's going to cheat anybody on what they're producing. If anything, they're going to put more product in there just to cover their bases, because that's the last thing you want to do is have somebody feel like they got shorted.
Do you have anything to add to that, Lee?
No, I think that's basically the point's been made.
Are there other updates or questions, comments? Okay. Our next meeting is July 11th at 9 a.m. There are some follow-ups that we will do. Oops, I wasn't on. Next meeting is July 11th at 9 a.m. We'll send follow-ups to council members of answers to questions that were asked in here, and we'll also make sure that those are on our website as publicly available information. All right, so seeing no further matters to discuss, I'd like to thank all of you for your time and contributions today. Our next meeting is July 11th, as I've said, 9 a.m. We're scheduled to be in here in this same room, room 230. Hopefully we will have our 6th council member and we can discuss a co-chair. If there's nothing else, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Okay, we have a motion to adjourn by Council Member Hendricks and a second from Council Member Gherkin. Okay, the motion carries. Oh, wait, do we need to call roll call? Okay, the motion carries and we are adjourned. Thank you, everyone. Have a great day.